Probably didn't go over too well. There we go. So let me try this again. Probably going to sound really bad on the video, but that's okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm Jas. I'm here to share a tool that I've been playing around with, and playing around with it has led to just building random things, and that's like my happy place. So when Stephen had asked me to present on something, I thought I'd go into this. So I titled this Insultingly Fast. I want to spend as much time as I can actually building, so I may go a little fast, but bear with me because I want to see if I can do it as fast as I hope to. So today I'm just going to touch on like 6 things, and they really don't matter. For me, I'm a systems integrator, solution architect. What it meant was back in the 90s, you had no choice but to learn the hardware, network, and the software to try to build anything. And that's the hangover I guess I just live with and see the world through every day now. So yeah, I've had the opportunity of being thrown down a lot of wells to connect the dots between data. Right now I do a lot of kind of just helping businesses track their details, because that's the biggest thing is, you know, everyone buys this technology, but it does nothing for them. But that's boring stuff. The question that I work to answer every day, it's the same question, every piece of software in every business. Where is everything at? The answers can be different, it can mean something else, but I found that's the pulse that drives a lot of what I do, and that's kind of where I see this stuff. So mobile dev today is kind of weird. I was just talking to someone before, but I heard someone talk about this, and I really feel this way. It's brutal, it's vicious, it's atrocious. Because at least in the 90s, you could still render everything to HTML, and it was kind of a page. It didn't matter whether you used CGI or Perl, but it's just really not nice. I mean, the long cycle times to build a web app, they exist now. We've already heard that, and before I get into this, I'm a huge fan of Xamarin. I like tools like this. I like native stuff too. I'm more of a polyglot, so I use everything. So in a lot of ways, things really haven't changed. They seem like they're new. We can do more because our phones have more horsepower. But on a Palm, you know, it used to be really about the user experience because you didn't have a lot of horsepower. Whereas now it's, you know, these devices we carry are more devices of novelty and distraction, and that's the currency that they kind of promote sometimes a little bit more than everything else. So that's coming back to solving problems, which is what I like to do. People get into this argument of mobile web, native, this and that. I'm not even a student of this. I'm just a student of problems now. I want to solve people's problems, and because, you know, a smidgen of our time sometimes, like if we just fix someone's Excel sheet, and they spend 10 hours a week extra doing it by hand, we can be really a little bit self-entitled of, oh, I'm above that, or I don't want to do this. So I try to keep myself, you know, as humble as possible, and just try to solve problems. Use the tools, learn, it doesn't matter. So before I get into anything, I want to be very clear, you know, use what works best, use what you know, it's okay. There's things about Apery that really stuck out to me, so I'm gonna start going through those. So before, again, I just want to qualify this. I really believe that software should work for people. That's my test. I really don't care about anything else, because that's the measure for me, is if people use it and it makes their life better, you know, and we're not working for software, that's really where I'm coming from with this presentation for those types of problems. So Apery is an extremely rapid mobile development tool that just, has anyone here tried to develop a mobile web app using PhoneGap? Yeah. I probably forced you to do it too. It's not very friendly because you have to integrate a lot of stuff by hand. It's gotten a lot better, but as Matthias was touching on, you know, the tools are just fragmenting constantly. So what I like about Apery is you develop it through the browser. There's some pros and cons to that, like everything. However, there's some really neat things that you can do that I'm hoping to show here pretty quick. One is, excuse me, obviously that you can natively compile right from the system. I just press compile, you get a binary, you send it up to the store, or you send it to wherever you want, and that's it. JavaScript is the only thing you really need to know or learn. I'm encouraging even beginners sometimes to say, well, if you're learning JavaScript as the first language you're learning, this might be some way to kind of keep fueling your learning and growth, because it's nice being able to build and release things. So in the room, I guess, how many developers do we have here? Oh, geez. Okay, designers? Cool. Business folks? Okay, cool. I'll allocate accordingly. So Apri is interesting. These are the problems. I tried to build a mobile web app by hand, and the performance responsive stuff aside, there is a little fix for it out now where the 300 millisecond delay when you tap it and it's registered as a tap, you actually can get rid of that now, but it's not going to be completely native, but it's actually quite passable, especially if you're solving a problem that people want. So Apri comes out of the box. It's kind of jQuery based. It takes care of the presentation layer, so you can use the default jQuery elements, and then you can customize them however you kind of see fit. There's caveats as always, and quicker ways to do things. PhoneGap is built in. It uses parse as the back end, so the database is already tied in. And I'll do a demo today of where I'm importing a CSV and it just creates my database for me. And I'm going to generate a service layer right off top of it and then spit it right into my app and compile it. And it lets you do a lot of things. And one of the other things that I ran into was sometimes if you need to access the phone number of your device, you can't do that native through these PhoneGap type systems. So you can write snippets of native, Java or, Objective-C and include them as libraries when and where you need them. Kind of thing. It's similar to what Matthias was saying with respect to Xamarin. So what I like about it, and I was really surprised by, it's used by a lot of big companies. I've found myself prototyping with it a lot. I'm a really big fan of measuring stuff, so the fact that I can tie in clicks right into using the tools I already use, whether it's Kissmetrics or Google Analytics or anything, it can do it. I don't have to worry about scaling. It's not my database. It's parsed. It's their problem. If you like the term MVP, I think this is the real test. It's a test, I guess. And it really lets you focus on just finding a problem to solve and not distracting yourself so much in the technology and this stack and architecting everything in my life to be easy for me as a developer, but I have very little time left for the user. And it kind of turns that on its head. And that's what I like about this for some problems. So before I get into this, my Android friends, do you all have a QR code reader? I'm going to compile something. I don't have my Apple App Store stuff set up because it's always more steps, but I'm going to try to render something for Android here. So I'll quickly go through a quick guide to the Apri interface. Let's see if we can build an app. And I'm going to kind of go down the spirit of what Matthias said here. Is we're going to start with a button, but I'm going to, instead of building stuff that I know how to build and say, oh, look, it's so easy, I'm actually just going to take a tutorial from the site, we're going to build it, and we're going to launch it. And I did it a couple of times today, and it looked like it worked, so I'm hoping everything with Apri is working fine right now. So let's switch over to so first, the Apri's website, kind of, I'll tackle the pricing stuff right now. They have a free plan. If your app can be built in 3 screens, it's free. They give you 1 million connections. You can just build and try out little things. They recently raised their pricing. I didn't have any problems paying for this. What I like about this is you can try out a lot of different ideas. I was a little hesitant at first, but it wasn't too big of a deal. There's a lot more documentation there was available, but let's get into Apri itself. So what I'm going to do here is just introduce you to the interface. So when you log in, you come to this one screen and you can deal with your apps, you can deal with your databases, you can send push notifications and configure them right from here. You can call server code. So if you've got snippets of code sitting somewhere that's a Python script, a Ruby script, it just doesn't really matter. If it's something sitting somewhere that needs to run and do something, you can just natively, inherently just call it. It doesn't matter. There's this concept of secure REST. They're trying to work in some enterprise-y stuff. There's a ton of plugins. One of the apps that I'm horsing around with right now is it's going to allow me to quickly create an account, make a payment through Stripe, purchase something through Twilio, and I'm using nothing but their built-in plugins, and I'm not spending time fighting with things. So I've already built the app once, but we're going to start it again. I'm just going to quickly go ahead and say, let's create a new app. I'm going to call this, I'm actually working on this for myself. When I eat out, I like knowing where there's food specials every day. There's no database that does this. There's no service that I've found. I hope not, if someone's going to Google it and tell me it, because I hired someone to make me a database of the restaurants just downtown Edmonton, and then they're calling every single restaurant to write down their daily specials. So I can just press a button and see where I am and what's close to me and what I can go eat. And these are the kinds of problems that I like solving just for the sake of solving problems. So I'm going to make an app here called Special Eat2, and I will kind of just walk through it and try to give you an introduction to the interface, because the hardest part I had with this was understanding where the interface and everything was at. So there's a nice amount of tutorials and videos and stuff that weren't available before. They have webinars on how to build all types of different apps, whether you're GPS-based, action-based, whatever. But what we're going to do is I'm actually just going to switch over into I picked a tutorial right here as building an app with Google Maps and geolocation. So I'm pulling a device feature, a live web feature together, and making it play together. So I think I might start speeding up now, but the layout of this is pretty simple. You have all your projects. You can create different things, pages, your services. You can create database services, and these are the things you will call. You can write custom snippets. You can shim in your own CSS. Anything you need. Because it is a code generation tool, the one massive caveat is it auto-generates code, so just be ready for that. But you can export code from here and bring it into Eclipse if you really had to. There's ways to do that, and it seems reasonably painless. From a project setting perspective, you can go through everything. You can set all your permissions in one place reasonably, and you know, whatever you want to do, and it will natively compile for Windows, iOS, and Android, as you see here. And then we'll go into the pages. So I'm just going to start up with the start screen here. And this is an interesting piece here. They've kind of put together a pretty good WYSIWYG tool here. And so what I'll do is I can just go to here, and I can just say, okay, well, this is my, I'll call this app Special Eat2, and that's great. So I'm going to switch to the tutorial. I'm just going to follow you through it and just do it. So it's kind of putting down 3 elements and connecting them. So it's asking me to drop an input down, and I'm naming it input. So I'm going to put it here. I'm going to call it enter location. That's the text I want. I'm going to call it input like it's asking me to. And when I let go, I should have an input here. And I don't really like how this looks. So I can go and choose any number of swatches. I can also pick Bootstrap, it's built in. If I want to use jQuery, and you can customize it all. So this is how I wanted it to look. The next thing this is asking me to do is to add 2 buttons. Okay, so I can just drag and drop 2 buttons here. I'm not going to pay attention to anything else. And it's saying add a Google Maps component. So what I'm going to do here, this is really interesting, is that there's things that are already built for embedding certain things that you may use pretty regularly. So I'm just going to drop a map in here, and I'm going to rename it to map as it's asked me to. Once this is done, I'll center this on to default on Edmonton, Alberta, and I'll say, hey, I want it to zoom in at about 13. Now that this is done, I'm just going to go up here, click save, because I might break something later. Oh, and I have to enable the show marker setting. So this is good. We'll go ahead and say it's asking us to test. So this goes into a really neat part. We have some neat things here where we can export straight to whatever we want, but there's also this test screen out here. So I can test it in a web browser or a remote debugger. And I'm just going to keep it really simple and focus on, didn't do that before. Let's try it again. So right now I have another plugin here that I'm using. I'm going to remove this frame. It's called Ripple. And what it does is it allows you to emulate all of the mobile events that you might want to pass in, whether it's GPS related, whether it's something to do with the accelerometer, whether it's location. You could even tell it, well, I want it to be portrait or landscape, and you can do a bunch of stuff in here. It was what I was using before Apple built their own thing. So here we have our map, everything's kind of working, great, but it doesn't do anything. So let's make it do something. I'm going to go ahead and say, it's asking us to read what's into the input field and update the map with its location. So, okay, well, let's create two buttons here. I'm going to put the right text on them first. So we'll say, I'll call this one show on map, and I'm going to call this one get my location. Once this is done, I'm going to switch back here, and it's saying to show a custom entered location, you must read the value. It's taking you through a very detailed level. So if you're not comfortable with these concepts or how do I make this run, it's pretty simple. So I'm going to take this snippet of code and I'm literally going to copy it. So it's saying click on the show on map button, then open the events tab, and then choose click and then run JavaScript. So this is a mouthful here, but what does it mean? When we go into Apper, you'll see that we have our components here, we have the properties, but we have this events tab down here. And this is the part that kind of gets neat. So we can say, click on show on map. So when I click on this button and it gets clicked, I want you to do any one of these actions. And so if I've got some JavaScript that I would like you to run, I can say, go put this in, and I believe I have elements that are named this, so that's good. So I'll say add this event when it's clicked, and it's pretty simple as that. So really quickly, this just tells you to go read what it was, but it's not sending it to the map yet. So let's save this again, and I'm going to try running this again. And so I'm just going to reload the frame here, and it's centered on Edmonton. As you can see, I didn't really do much, and I'll put in Vancouver. And it goes to Vancouver. And I could say, well, I want to put in a postal code, or I don't know. Here, I'll put in my postal code. And if I go show on map, it goes right to my map. And so right now I've tied this together, and I'm going to go one step further now with this and say, well, I want to tie this into my location. So we can do this thing. Apper has this concept of services. It's not very special for JavaScript development and stuff, but what I liked about it was I can go to, I'll do it according to this. I'll go from the project view right here. We're going to go create new, and we're just going to create a service. And it allows us to create different kinds of services. They can be accessing a REST thing somewhere or actually on the device. So we'll say we want to do a geolocation service. So I'll say, yeah, go ahead and create it for me, please. And it creates a service for me. I can do interesting things here, and I'll show you this in a second. So what we'll do here is we're going to go back to start screen. So I'm going to close this up. I'm going to go back to the start screen. You'll see we have two tabs here. This is the front end, and this is literally the back end of that screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to add a service, and the service, oops, I want to add a device, I'm sorry. And I want to add a geolocation service. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. Now this is available, so it's going to generate all this. I don't have to do anything. And again, I'm just prototyping something. So I can go and say, well, it's been added. Now I want to edit the mapping. And this is the part that for me was a little bit of a light bulb. I just thought this was so cool that they kind of figured it out. Now what I can do is I can say, well, the request will run, and when it comes back, I get back some coordinates. When I get back some coordinates, the longitude and latitude, I want to go into my screen. I'm going to navigate the DOM, and I'm going to say, well, let's take latitude and tie it to latitude. Let's take longitude and tie it to longitude. And I think that's all I want to do here. And we got to do this other thing here, that once we're done in the events, we want to say when this event has been successfully run, mapping the events tab. So add the following event. Okay, so we're going to go geolocation. We're saying when this component successfully runs, we want you to run a snippet for us, which is go update the map. And I'm going to go ahead and add that. So now this, we just wired it, a whole bunch of stuff together. And we'll go ahead, and I'm just going to click save here so I didn't break anything. And I have to do one last thing. We're going to go back to our screen in the design view. We actually want this button to do something. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to click events. I'm going to go, well, when this is clicked on, I prefer to use taps, but whatever, they're using clicks, that's cool. And I'm going to say I want you to invoke a service, and the service I'd like you to call is geolocation. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay, that's good. And I think I'm done. Now I can test the app. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and click test, and it's gonna automatically upload my window here. I'm gonna remove this frame. So far, what we've been able to demonstrate is I can type in a city. So I hope this still works. It does. But I'm gonna click get my location, and it's gonna pass in these coordinates, which are Edmonton. So I could edit these at any time and just put in whatever I wanted, but it should go back to Edmonton, and it does. So I could use the little navigator down here, and I can move this wherever I want. And so I could zoom way the heck out and move the map to, I don't know, somewhere kind of Vancouverish or randomly on the coast. And the values get updated here. So if I run this again, oh, what did I do here? Okay. So if I do that, it'll put you in the middle of nowhere. So we have an app now, I think. This looks like it works. I'm gonna go ahead, at this point, I could go and copy in something, but this is a limited high-level demo. What about the backend? And so there's another setting up here called database. I'm gonna take you into the other side of Apiary, and we're gonna create a database. And the database, I'll just call it Special E2, and I'm gonna go ahead and create it. I'm gonna open it up. So they kind of have created a front end to parse that you can kind of access anyways. This is exactly parse.io that you're running. They generate all your user and file front end stuff, anything you need to track with the device. They have the methods automatically generated for that. But what we'll do is I'll say, well, you know, I was telling you guys that I hired someone to go through and go get me, I think they're at 310 restaurants downtown in Edmonton. I'm floored. There's some kind of outside downtown, and then I also have some specials that I've kind of put in, but that's the part that is still coming. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna download this as a CSV. And I'm gonna use this to create the back end of my app. So I'm just gonna go ahead, save. I'm gonna switch back over here to my app, and I wanna import a collection. So if I didn't want to go ahead and create the columns and the rows and do everything here, I can actually go ahead and just import a file, and I hope my column names are correct. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna import it, and I'm gonna call this, I'll just call it restaurant. And sure enough, it's gonna go ahead and pull everything in for me. It's all here to my heart's content. The cool thing now is I can switch back to the app side, and I can render and generate all of the database services without doing too much work. So I'm gonna go back and open this up. And how are we doing for time? Are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And we're very close to rendering this, and I can get into questions while it's gonna be compiling. So the last piece that I wanted to show, just to get your appetite whet to go try this out maybe, or something like it. There's other tools, just try one out. I can say I want to add database services. So I'll pick my new database, and I can select which database services I want to generate all my methods for. And I'll say I want everything. And it goes ahead and it does it. So the cool thing now is, if we look over here, we'll see that we have a bunch of services that get generated. We can do stuff with files. We can do stuff with logging in, logging out, managing session. We can create records. We can do custom queries of data, in which we can all feed back and bind to the components using the same drag and drop method between the fields. So in the interest of time, I was really trying to get this done as quickly as I could. I'll stop here. But one thing I'd like to do is, if everybody has their QR code generator, this is what I really wanted to try out. I'm just going to generate an APK. It's going to spit out a QR code on screen for you to download, and hopefully it installs and runs. So I guess that's kind of what I've got for a demo. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Is there any other questions? Ask me later.
Ask me later, yeah. I guess. Well, this is going to take like 20-30 seconds to run, so if there's any questions right now.
I have a question. So this is the IDE you are using to develop the application, or
Yeah.
do you have anything?
It's a web-based IDE, so it just runs in Chrome.
So we don't have a native IDE.
No, they don't. Not that I know of. You can download the code and do it yourself. I don't really recommend it. But
Can you use this library to access the sensors on mobile phones?
yes, you can.
And because we want to do some apps to collect data in real time. If we use this library, is there any performance hurt?
I think performance is a funny word now because going back to the days of Palm, that was an issue. Today, there's so much horsepower on phones. I think battery drainages could be an issue. I've built something where it was tracking your location consistently, and it's not bad. You can time it to say what you want. You can manage it. It's like anything, I think. There's pros and cons to everything. So does anyone want to try downloading this? Oh.
Maybe we can leave it up there and people can go up.
Sure.
Well, we're going to just put it in accident debate.
Okay.
What was the name of the simulated
I'm sorry? Oh, the simulator? It was called Ripple. I have a slide I can share with that on there. Oh, the problems of projector. Better? So it'll download an APK that you'll have to run. You may have to turn on developer mode. There's always caveats with this stuff, but yeah, my last slide actually has some of the stuff here, and I'll leave this up. So I also want to say thanks to the organizers here. These are really cool events because you can actually learn stuff and it's open, kind of inclusive. So I want to say thank you, and I'm happy I had something to share for once. So here it is.